for a few people to get on for this NCAA live stream. Ole Miss and Mississippi State both make the tournament as we expected, which is a good thing. You know, it's not often that we get both teams in the NCAA tournament. But we're going to wait a second for a few people to hop on. But it's pretty big what happened to both of those teams. We're going to start with Ole Miss first, and then we'll move on to Mississippi State, since I think Ole Miss got just a wonderful draw. It was actually they may have gotten the best draw of all the teams in the tournament. Now, there's some things that I cannot believe. The North Carolina guy being the committee chair and North Carolina somehow getting in as one of the final teams is just, it blows my mind, especially because North Carolina has one more quad win than Mississippi Valley. I'm sorry, Mississippi Valley fans, for shouting you out right now, but North Carolina has one more quad win than Mississippi Valley. I don't know how North Carolina got in. I thought if they probably beat Duke, they probably should have got in, but either way, that one just kind of blows my mind. But it looks like some people are hopping on right now. Again, Ole Miss and Mississippi State both make the tournament, and then both those teams should be able to make the women's tournament as well, which is just wonderful to see. We can talk a little bit about Jackson State if you guys want at the end of this as well, which was very disappointing to see at the end there. I thought Jackson State was going to get into the tournament as well. However, they do not. But let's get it started. I'm going to first bring up the actual bracket because that's what you guys are here to see. So we'll go to NCAA.com. All right, let's pull up the bracket. Let's start with Ole Miss first, which got the Auburn side of the bracket. Auburn, the number one overall seed. I'm a little surprised by that, only because I thought Florida probably should have gotten it right after what they did to Tennessee today and what they've done pretty much the whole tournament against Alabama as well. But we go to Ole Miss, who's the sixth seed. Now, you see that blank right there. They're going to play one of these two teams right down here that we see at the bottom, San Diego State or North Carolina. If I'm Ole Miss, I'm praying that North Carolina somehow wins that game. The reason that they got such a great draw is because look at what is around them. So they're on the bottom side of the South, which, again, they get to play in the South, which is wonderful. They have Iowa State as their 3, Michigan State as their 2. So normally when we look at a bracket and we're going to see how their path lines up, which of course we know that that's not necessarily how this works. Obviously, that's why our brackets bust immediately. Iowa State and Michigan State was the best 2-3 Ole Miss could possibly have drawn. When you look down here and you look at some of these others, Texas Tech, really good team. Did you want St. John's or Michigan State? Do you want Rick Pitino in the tournament or Tom Izzo? I know that sounds really funny, but I don't want nothing to do with Rick Pitino. We look at Tennessee on the other side. You don't want Tennessee. I know that they played them well earlier in the year as well, but Kentucky and Tennessee, weird. I don't want to play SEC teams necessarily that early in the tournament, especially teams that you've seen. I'd rather play somebody else. And then we look over here, Alabama and Wisconsin. Alabama, Wisconsin could have kind of been a good one too, but let's go back to Iowa State and Michigan State. First off, Iowa State in the most recent poll was the 12th ranked team. If we go to the AP poll, I'm going to pull it up actually here in just a second. So Iowa State is arguably the worst 3 seed that they could have gotten. Actually, I just take my word for it. AP poll. They're the 12th ranked team. So that would mean that they are the worst 3 seed. Ole Miss got that draw. They got the worst 3 seed, which would be the team that they would play in the second round. Beating the 12th best team in the country? That's doable. I've seen Ole Miss play some of the best teams in the country and beat them. So all of a sudden, their draw to the weekend too, where they get a week to prepare for Michigan State, Marquette, New Mexico, maybe Bryant, probably not Bryant. That is massive for them to be able to have that opportunity to get to weekend 2 with Iowa State. Now, Iowa State has some good wins this year. They're not a pushover by any means. But the reality is that's the best possible 3 they could have gotten, and that's massive. Now we look at Michigan State, who I actually think is a good team. They're the 7th ranked team in the AP poll, but I would rather play them than some of these other 2s. If we look again, Alabama, Tennessee, or St. John's, if you have to think in your mind, who would you rather play? If I gave you those 4 teams, Tennessee, who's been playing really well, Alabama, who could score 150 points, Rick Pitino, Michigan State, I know Tom Izzo is a great coach that's been to a lot of Final Fours, but That's a great draw. And then when you look at the top half of the bracket, Michigan could knock off Auburn. Texas A&M, I think we're looking at Michigan right there. But either way, great draw for Ole Miss. Now let's go talk about Mississippi State for just a moment. So Mississippi State gets the 8th seed. Okay, not bad. What was the good news here, because there's good and there's bad news, which, by the way, if you guys ever want to go to my TikTok, magnolia.shine.podcast, please do that, because you know what? I always break these down in a little 1-minute videos. But Mississippi State gets Baylor. Baylor, solid team. Let's go to their ESPN hub. All right, looking at Baylor, the team that they're going to play in the 8-9 round, which is always kind of a coin flip. They played Gonzaga early, but they got a win over Arkansas. Let's go down here. Tennessee, they played. They beat St. John's early. Again, this is going to be a solid team. The close game to UConn, Iowa State, not good, close. Looking here, here's the good news again for Mississippi State. Look at the end of the season for Baylor. This is not good. This is not a great finish to the season. We're looking at, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're 3-5 in their last 8. That's a good draw for Mississippi State in the 8-9 matchup by far. I mean, that is good that they got that team who has not been playing well, who's a 10-10 team in the Big 12. That's good news for them. All right, so we go back to this tab. Not bad matchup. Duke is their 1 seed. There is some good and there is some bad in this. If Duke is healthy, they have no answer for Cooper Flagg. We've watched Mississippi State now down the stretch here give up 93 to 94 points per game in their last 5 that are non-LSU games, because LSU is not even a real basketball team at this moment. So they're giving up a lot of points, and Duke can score with the best of them. If Duke is not healthy, however, they are the weakest one. So there is a catch-22 with the one in their bracket. It's also good that they're playing in the East with Duke. I think, not Duke not being necessarily super close, although I would have to check where this game is, because sometimes they're on the East and then it's in the South anyways, or on the West. Really weird. Duke, the easiest 1 seed if they're not healthy with Cooper Flagg. Again, if Cooper Flagg's there, I just don't see how they could possibly beat them. But if they do, we're looking at Arizona and Oregon in the bottom half. I could argue Mississippi State actually matches up with both those teams really well. There's this weird thing when you're the 8 or the 9 seed that it's such a tough matchup to start, because it's usually a 1 or 2 point spread in the game, so it's kind of like a coin flip game. But if you do get past the 1 seed, it opens up. And a lot of the times we see a 12 upset of 5, we see a 13 upset of 4, and that kind of gets jumbled on the bottom. And all of a sudden you have like this unique path to the Final Four when you're an 8 or 9 if you're able to upset the number 1. I want to show you guys something really interesting, though, now that we've broken down those 2 matchups as well. Here's what I thought was very interesting when it came to the college basketball and March Madness. I saw this the other day, and I just thought this was fascinating. Here are the percentages for each seed to get to each round. So, as you can see, a 1 seed has a 64%, there's 64% chance that a 1 seed is going to win the tournament, 50% that there's going to be 1 in the national championship game, 39% that they make it there, although that doesn't make actually any sense. Forget for just a moment. Sorry, I usually was just looking at the front part of this. If we look, I see what they did on the national championship, just the percentage that there is 1 there. Okay, but let's look at just the Final Four here. We're going to zoom this in a little bit. All right, so you see here, the 1 seed, the chances of them going to the round of 32, 98.7%. Here's why I think this Ole Miss thing is so good that they're the 6th seed. Now, if they're the 5 seed, of course, they have about a 4% chance better of making the next round. To make the Sweet 16, they have about 6% chance more. But here's where it's interesting. As a 6 seed, you actually have a better chance of making the Elite 8 as a 6 seed than an 8 seed, or than a 5 seed, which is about 8% chance. Isn't that unique to think about? Now, the Final Four, of course, it's easier if you're a 5 than a 6, because, again, you're probably a better team as well. The reason that is that you see this 7 versus 10% being the 6 versus the 5 is when we go to the bracket and we look here. 6 has to play to get to the Elite 8. the 2 seed. If you're a 4 or a 5, to get to the Elite Eight, you most likely have to play the 1 seed. Hence, Ole Miss actually benefiting if their goal is to get to the Elite Eight, to get maybe to the Final Four, although again, then the percentages change. But let's say their goal is the Elite Eight. Getting to the Elite Eight makes a great season for Ole Miss. It is better that they are a 6 than they are a 4 or 5. Now we go back to the bracket odds, and we look at the 8 versus 9, which is so unique. The chances of the 8 seed moving on, more 9 seeds beat 8 seeds. It's one of those, again, it's one of those coin flip things, which is just really interesting, that 52% of 9 seeds win. So if you're doing your bracket, I guess take more 9 seeds, 3 of the 4. I mean, it's more likely to happen. However, in the next round, beating the 1 seed, it's better if you're an 8. Actually, double the chances of beating the 1 seed if you are the 8 seed. So really interesting. I thought that Mississippi State almost would rather have been a 10 seed, because your chances of making the Sweet 16 if you're an 8 seed, 10.3%. And then if you're a 10 seed, it's actually 15.4. So to make weekend 2, it would have been better if Mississippi State was a 10 seed than an 8 seed. Again, we're getting really analytical here, but I think it's really important to look at this. I find it fascinating if you're an 11 seed. You actually have a 17.3. You have actually a better than if you're an 8, 9, or 10 if you're an 11 seed to make the second weekend. So very interesting stuff looking at that. Now, before we go, I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Tough game for Jackson State last night. I just want to talk about that for just a moment. Really tough. Jackson State was about 40 minutes away. Really, it was like 2 minutes away from making the NCAA tournament. Their guys ran out of gas. Really tough to watch that go down. They probably should have rested some of those guys earlier in the second half when they had a 6, 7, 8-point lead. But either way, really good season for Jackson State. However, very disappointing the way that it ended, because you felt like you had more talent on the floor. You had a better big. You had better guards, in my opinion, although the guards from Alabama State played better. So don't take my words and turn them. So really interesting stuff, again, with this NCAA tournament. Make sure to always follow the Magnolia Shine podcast on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube as well, and then TikTok, most important, at magnolia.shine.podcast. Go ahead and go follow that. Always posting kids highlights and things like that, and then also giving my opinion. But really good draw for Ole Miss, average draw for Mississippi State, and then Jack State, very tough for them to lose in the way that they did last night.